Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Armor Gaming and welcome to Monster Analysis. Up for analysis today is Demise. Demise was the princess of the underworld until one day she felt the sunlight for the first time. She then ran away to the land of the living with her pet ska, Manuel, and became the protector of its inhabitants. Demise is a light monster, therefore her weakness is metal, and here we have her as a child, as a teen, and as an adult. And this is a pretty cool design in my opinion. But anyways, let's analyze her stats. Her power is 3003. And if we're talking about only light legendary monsters, this is actually the lowest power. And if we're talking about every single monster in the Monster Legends Kingdom, her power puts her in the bottom 20. So as you can see, this power is really low. However, in my opinion, it doesn't even matter that her power is that low. Her power could be 0 for all I care. This monster is a supporter and she's honestly a really good supporter. You're gonna see that later on when I talk about her skills. So to me, it doesn't matter if her power was 0 or if her power was 9000. She is primarily a pure supporter. Her life is 28,651. And currently in the game, there are 15 light legendary monsters. So with a life like this, it actually puts her in tied for 9th place with Cassia. And lastly, she has a speed of 3,465. Which again, when we're talking about light legendary monster, this puts her in 4th place. So although that might not seem like a really high speed, this speed is actually pretty fast. In fact, this is the speed that most deny monsters have. This is the exact same speed that Tempest, Kaolic, Mami, Uru, all of those monsters I just mentioned, all of those monsters have some sort of deny skill. Uru has AoE stun, Mami also has AoE stun, Kaolic has AoE freeze, Tempest has AoE stun, and for the most part, the monsters I named, those are the fastest monsters with a deny skill in their own category. The only exception is the dark category, which of course has Krampus, who has a speed above 3500. So Demise isn't faster than Krampus, but she's faster or just as fast as every other deny monster. And it's really important that you keep her speed in mind, because she has a skill that will make it all make sense, so I'll talk about that later on. And lastly, her trait is immune to instant death, which although isn't necessarily the best trait to have, I just think it fit her character. You know, she is already dead, so given a skill that gives immunity to instant death, that actually fits. Immune to possession or immune to freeze, heck, even a skill like hardened or even immune to blind I would have been okay with. Immune to instant death, not the best trait, but it is fitting for her character. But anyways, now we're gonna move on to her skills, and I'm gonna try something a little different. I'm gonna be skipping the default skills, and I'm gonna be skipping skills group 1, unless I think there's something worth talking about. Hopefully this saves some time, because most of the time I just end up saying that the default skills and skills group 1 is not worth running. So I'm gonna try it for this video, and then you guys can let me know whether you want me to talk about skills group 1 and the default, or if I can just skip them all together. So anyhow, let's start things off with her special. La Muerte applies 3 random negative effects to targets. So scrolling down so you can see all the different negative effects, and this is one of the most amazing skills in the game. Or one of the most amazing special skills, I should say. 3 random negative effects. Look at all the different stuff you can land. You can do possession, you can do freeze, you can do rebooted. There's just so many deny skills that you can possibly land. You have stun, you can even do stamina drain. There's just so many negative effects that can immobilize the enemy, and you have 3 shots on every single enemy. So you're dishing out 9 negative effects. That's amazing. And again, one thing to notice, it doesn't deal any damage, which is fine considering this monster has a low power anyways, and considering you're not even going to be using strength runes or anything, this is fine that it deals no damage. The whole point of this effect is just to deal lots of negative effects, which it does, and overall it's just a fantastic skill. So before I completely breeze over skills group 1, I think the only skill worth talking about is Painful Disguise. Applies 1 random negative effect to target, requires cooldown. So you target a single enemy and you can apply 1 random negative effect. For some reason, I do think some people will consider running this skill, however I don't think this skill is even worth running. Yes, the 1 random negative effect could mean the difference between winning or losing a game, because you could potentially immobilize the enemy monster that would have defeated you the following turn, but the chance of that isn't too likely. I think she has better skills in skills group 2 and 3, so there's no reason to run Painful Disguise. I just wanted to say that really quickly about skills group 1, and that's really all I have to say about Painful Disguise. So we're gonna move things on to skills group 2 and 3. In skills group 2, we have an attack called Shining Tackle. Deals moderate special damage, may blind target. It targets a single enemy with 45 damage, costing 28 stamina, and it has no cooldown. So I don't believe this skill is worth running. The fact that it gives blind is pretty good. Minus 50% accuracy to an enemy monster is amazing, because the likelihood of them landing a hit on you isn't too high. The problem is that if you're using this monster in Team Wars, lots of light monsters tend to be immune to blind. And then even if you're thinking, well, the good thing is that this skill deals special damage as opposed to light damage, yeah, that's true, but also keep in mind that she has such a low power that it doesn't matter if this monster does deal special damage, it's still going to be dealing a little damage, so there's no reason to run Shining Tackle. So next we have Draining Light. Steals 15% life from all targets, may give regeneration to all allies, requires cooldown. So it's an AoE dealing 15 damage, costing you 30 stamina, and it has a 4-turn cooldown. So this skill is pretty cool. You get lifesteal 50%, meaning whatever damage you dish out to the enemy, to all 3 of the enemy monsters, you're going to be recovering 50% of that damage. But even better, you give your whole team life regeneration. So for the following 3 turns, you're going to be recovering 20% of your life. Now, I've seen people's main concern with this is that it's so weak. 15 damage is a little for an AoE. But again guys, you have to keep in mind, this monster is not an attacker, she's a supporter. The best thing about this ability is that you give your team life regeneration. Who cares if it deals a little damage? You're going to be recovering your team's life. That's really the only purpose of this skill. If it didn't have lifesteal and this was even weaker, to me I wouldn't really care. The life regeneration is what you're after. You're not there to deal damage. So in my opinion, Draining Light is definitely worth running. And the final skills from skills group 2 is Endless Celebration. Deals low light damage to all enemies, removes all positive status effects from all targets, requires cooldown. It's an AoE dealing 30 damage, costing you 35 stamina with a 3 turn cooldown, and this skill is good because it removes all positive status effects. So for example, if you're going up against light monsters who tend to give themselves lots of shields, even light monsters, they have lots of team buffs, you can essentially remove all of those buffs. Now in my opinion, this is a maybe skill that you might want to run. So before I explain why I'm saying that, let me move over to skills group 3. In skills group 3, she has a skill called When Light Corrupts. Deals moderate special damage, removes all positive status effects from the target, applies 2 random negative effects to the target, requires cooldown. It attacks a single enemy with 45 damage, it costs 34 stamina, and it has a 3 turn cooldown. And in my opinion, this is another skill you should run. It gives one enemy 2 random negative effects, and on top of that, if they have any positive status effects, it's going to remove all of that. I mean, there's not really much to say other than this skill is awesome. Now I'm actually going to move down to the Light Within. The Light Within removes all negative status effects, gives damage boost to allies, requires cooldown. This is a team skill, so deals no damage, it costs you 34 stamina, and it has a 3 turn cooldown. So in a way, the Light Within is kind of opposite to Endless Celebration. Whereas Endless Celebration removes positive effects from the enemies, the Light Within removes debuffs from your allies. Now if you're planning on using this monster in Team Wars, you're going to be going up against light monsters for sure. And light monsters tend to dish out lots of blinds and daze. In fact, there are so many monsters that have like a team blind move or a team daze move, and for that reason I think it's worth running the Light Within more than it is running Endless Celebration, because most of the time you'll probably find your team being blinded or dazed. So why not just remove all of the debuffs from your allies and at the same time give your allies a little damage boost. Whereas with Endless Celebration, sure you'll dish out a little damage, but keep in mind you have a low power, and yes, you can remove positive effects. So when you think about it, General Ingvar is a perfect example of that. He gives his team life regeneration and stamina regeneration, so it might be worth running Endless Celebration. But I don't know, in my opinion the Light Within would just come in handy more often. Not to mention you do have When the Light Corrupts, which also does remove all positive status effects from a single target. So you have to ask yourself, how often will you have to remove all positive status effects from all of the enemies, as opposed to just a single enemy? But enough about that, let's talk about her final skill, Strength from Beyond. And I have to say, this skill, combined with her base speed of 3465, Strength from Beyond gives 1 extra turn to an ally, gives double damage to ally for 1 turn, and it requires a cooldown. So this skill costs 31 stamina, and it has a 4 turn cooldown, but look at that, it gives 1 extra turn to an ally, and it gives them double damage. This is definitely an overpowered skill. And when you combine that knowledge with the fact that she is just as fast or even faster than like 95% of Deny monsters, this makes her overpowered. Now yes, of course, you can argue that that statement I just made is completely false, but I really want everyone to think about this. It gives your ally an extra turn, and it gives them double damage. That's basically what Barbatos does to himself. Barbatos gives himself double damage and an extra turn. This monster has that skill, but she can do it to anyone. And again, referencing her speed, 3465, this makes it so that you no longer need a Deny monster on your team. The enemy can have a General Thetis, they can have a Cabin Fish, and it doesn't matter. You can run an attacker with 3 strength runes, and because you give that monster an extra turn, it's going to move over to your attacker's turn, and they're going to be able to attack and wipe out the enemy Deny monster before they even get a chance to deny you. That's crazy good. When Demise uses her Strength from Beyond skill, it essentially just takes the attacker and makes the attacker attack immediately right after her. So for example, it doesn't matter if that attacker's speed was like 1000, and everyone else had like 3000. Demise's skill makes it so that the monster you buff, they're gonna attack immediately after Demise. And that just means there's endless combinations you can do with her. Take for example one of the strongest monsters in the game who never gets used because he is so darn slow, Worker Hulk. Worker Hulk has a speed of like 2100. He has a power of 3600. Now Worker Hulk also has an attack that's like 70 damage, 0 cooldown, and it drains 20% of the enemy stamina. So I decided to test Worker Hulk and Demise out. I got Worker Hulk, I put Demise is running all speed. Worker Hulk only had 1 rune slot unlocked, so I put 1 level 5 strength rune. Now if you look at the churn order on top, as you can see Worker Hulk isn't even going to get a churn in. But then when I use the skill, Strength from Beyond, Worker Hulk goes next, and I'm gonna use his skill, and he dishes out 31k damage. That's insane. This is a monster that only has one level 5 strength rune, and he's dishing out 31,000 damage. So basically what this means is that any monster you use Demise with, whatever monster you're buffing, it's basically like they have the exact same speed as Demise just for that first turn. So now if you want to, you can put 3 strength runes on any monster. You can put 3 strength runes on an attacker. I mean, to be honest, you can put 3 strength runes on a deny monster too. You can put 3 strength runes on Krampus, and then Demise will go, it's gonna buff a Krampus with 3 strength runes, then when Krampus goes, he's gonna use his AoE free skill, and he's also buffed because of that double damage and the 3 strength runes, and you're still gonna be able to deny. Like, I really just can't get over how amazing Strength from Beyond is. You can buff an attacker, you can buff a deny monster, you can buff whoever you want. The main point is that this skill gives that monster you're buffing an immediate churn. To give everyone another example, let's take someone like Voltic who has extra churn skills. So this would also apply to someone like Zyla and even someone like Mercurius. So to talk about Mercurius for example, Strength from Beyond only gives the monster double damage for 1 extra turn, while Mercurius has a skill that gives himself double damage. So if you were to give Mercurius an extra turn, and then Mercurius uses his own skill to give himself double damage, keep in mind he still has his original churn. So then when his original churn comes along, he can use his extra churn skills. But to talk about someone like Voltic who I actually have footage for, and again I have to stop myself just in case I wasn't clear, the way her skill works is that it gives a monster an extra churn. That doesn't change the churn order. So for example, if a monster wasn't supposed to go for 3 more churns, all that happens is that monster gets an extra churn right now, but once that churn is used, it goes back to the original churn order. But now going back to Voltic, because this skill gives you an immediate churn, if you want to, you can run 3 stamina runes, and then just use up all that stamina attacking all of the enemy monsters. But anyways, let's just suppose you're running a stamina rune, a strength rune, maybe a speed rune, right? And let's suppose that the enemy is still faster than you. They still have a deny monster who's faster than your Voltic, which would make sense, because the enemy deny monster would have all speed, whereas your Voltic would probably have 1 speed at most. So anyways, you start off with Demise, you use Strength from Beyond, and then you give Voltic an immediate extra churn. So then all Voltic has to do is use up his stamina to wipe out the enemy deny monster, so that would make it so that Voltic would go next in the churn order. So then Voltic can use up all his stamina, he can recharge, and then he can go back to attacking. Believe me when I say, Demise's skill, Strength from Beyond, is an absolute amazing skill, and it's even more amazing because her speed is 3,465. If she was slower, then I wouldn't say she's overpowered, I wouldn't say she's a game changer, but because she has that speed and because she has this skill, she is definitely a game changer. Without question, you absolutely need to run 3 speedruns on this monster. The main point of this monster is to go first and to use Strength from Beyond. As far as what other skills you should run for this monster, I would say When Light Corrupts, The Light Within, and Draining Light. However, if you find it more useful removing buffs from the enemy as opposed to removing debuffs from yourself, then run Endless Celebration as opposed to the Light Within. In fact, if you think it's useless running this Life Regeneration team skill, if you really think there's no point to run this skill because you won't need to, you might as well just run Endless Celebration in all of Skills Group 3, which actually also does make a lot of sense. Because as I've already said, the main point of this monster is to start off with Strength from Beyond, which means your attacker is going to be going next, and I gotta tell you guys, most attackers, they can pretty much wipe out 2 or 3 of the enemy monsters, maybe all 3 of them. So I can totally see the argument that it's not worth running this skill, and it's better to be prepared, just in case the enemy does give themselves a full life shield, or double life, or in case they do like an AoE blind and daze. So I can totally see that argument. Maybe it's not worth running Draining Light, maybe it's worth running Endless Celebration and all of Skills Group 3. But really, the 2 skills I would run are Strength from Beyond and When Light Corrupts. And then these last 3 skills, Draining Light, Endless Celebration, The Light Within, that's ultimately up for you guys to choose. But I urge everyone not to mistake the purpose of this monster. This monster is a pure support monster, and she's quite possibly the best support monster ever to be released. To summarize everything I said really quickly, her power is rather low, but that doesn't really matter, and her skills, specifically Strength from Beyond, is a phenomenal skill, a game-changing skill in my opinion. I'm gonna go as far as to say she might just be the best light legendary monster ever to be released. And with all that being said guys, that concludes my analysis on Demise. Thank you to everyone who made it to the very end of this video. Be sure to leave a like, be sure to leave a comment, let me know if you disagree or if you agree with anything I said in this entire video, and let me know if I missed anything. Also make sure to let me know who you want me to analyze next. I hope everyone has a great day. Remember to dream big and pursue your passions.